Hi everybody, Karen Alari here. Well, I just watched the solar eclipse here in Portland and it got to about 98% here, so it wasn't complete, but it was still really cool. And it was such a great example of how to paint dappled light and shadows, tree shadows on the ground, that I just wanted to share this with you real quickly. Um, so here's an image that I took during the solar eclipse, and if you can see all these little crescent shapes that are showing up here, those are all, that was how far along the eclipse was as far as the sun goes. Here's what that looks like normally without a solar eclipse. And I think something that we tend to do when we're painting shadows, dapple light like this, is we tend to want to paint uh, sharp edges and leaf shapes. And so this is such a great visual reminder of how it's really rounded, soft, round shapes that we're painting. And why that is because I don't know if you've ever used a pinhole viewer when you watched an eclipse, but if you just put a tiny pinhole in a piece of cardboard and then put another piece of white paper underneath it, and then face it so the sun shines through the pinhole, you can watch the eclipse that way and you'll see the crescent shape forming. Well, it's the same concept with the light between the leaves of the trees. So the leaves just make all these little tiny pinholes, and so that's the effect that you're having with the sun during an eclipse. So when you're painting those, what you're going to do is have these rounded shapes that are very soft on the edges. And I wanted to show you something too about painting the dappled light like this. If you look at the colors that are forming, let me put this up here so we can see it. Okay, so if you look at the values that are forming, so here is this color here, it's about this far down as far as value from light to dark. And in the very center of those holes, it's very light. And then, of course, in the shadowed area, it's quite a bit darker. So you get this gradation of light with all soft edges going all the way through there. Whenever you're painting that dappled light, you're painting these little circles, and when they're small enough like this, you don't even get to that bright light, you only get about that far. So that's something that's just really important to remember with dappled light. Soft edges and gradations from dark to light in this gradated soft area. So, and then of course the further away you get from them, the softer they're going to be. And if you change your angle of viewing, in this photograph I'm looking almost straight down on the sidewalk in front of my house. So you get these are fairly round, especially right here where I'm looking pretty much straight down. And then as you move away, they're going to become more ellipse-like, just like just like anything that you're going to paint. When your perspective changes from head-on and then it starts to move, the circle becomes more of an ellipse. So gosh, just a great example of that. So looking at our the one here where during the solar eclipse, you can see all these wonderful little crescent shapes that are formed by every one of those little pinholes of light that you're seeing. You're still getting that gradation, so you're getting a dark here, and notice it's just like a mid-tone. That's another thing we tend to do in painting, is make our shadows too dark. And now, so if I go to the very center of the shadow, it gets this dark, and then as you move to the edges of the shadow, it gets much lighter until you get right onto those soft edges where it gets even lighter. Here's another interesting thing with the eclipse itself, is the color of the light. And this is also going to happen in as the sun is going down and you get the light going warmer, but we often talk about reflected light and the way that the light changes in the shadows. So during non-eclipse time, this was just taken like 10 minutes after the eclipse, you can see sort of the color that those shadows are, whereas during the eclipse, do you see how this base color changed from more of a cool color to a warmer color, just slightly? Now, as we get out to the edges, let me zoom in a little bit here. Okay, then we can capture a little bit more closely. Okay, here's our sort of gradation to the edge there. And it's really interesting to watch how the base color changes. It's still very light and gray, so it's clear over here, but the base color itself is just all over the map. I don't know, to me that says something about how much sunlight has all the colors within it, you know. So there's your color in your shadow, and then in deeper shadow it's even darker. See how dark that gets? And then the color of the light and the color on the edges, see how much warmer that is during the eclipse as the sun changes its color, and then the color in the shadow shifts. Oh, just thought that was really cool. So, and a great example for us in terms of painting these shadows. So, for example, here is an example of a painting that I did with shadows. And you know, I've tended not to really think about this circular pattern so much, but you know, when you paint what you see, you're gonna get those circular patterns. So, you know, as you can see in this painting, I've tried to get those circular patterns in the shadows. The smaller ones are darker, and then the larger ones have this brighter center to them, and then they gradate out to cooler and cooler as you go out, and darker as you go out. Here's another example, Path in the Park here. Again, trying to work with the light being warmer in the very center and brighter, and then gradating out and in these circular shapes. So anyway, just a quick little visual reminder of shadows and light, and just kind of a celebration of the eclipse, which was a very cool experience. And I will be talking to you soon. Bye-bye.